Hello, David Icke.
Hello.
Good to have you. Thank you for taking the time to share with us your new and latest discoveries. I know you've been investing a lot of your time in researching who's controlling us and what's happening in the world. You wrote apparently over 16 books, including your latest one that is called Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. So tell us about this latest book. What are you revealing in it?
Well, I've been on a journey for 20 years now, actually almost exactly 20 years in the March just gone. And it's been a progression of following the clues. And what happened to me 20 years ago is that I went to a psychic because there was this feeling that when I was ever in a room alone, I wasn't alone. There was a presence there. And this went on for month after month after month, and eventually I went to see a psychic for the first time in my life to see if she would pick up what was I felt was going on around me, and she did, and I got this all these if you like messages through her at the time 20 years ago, that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, and that they would put information, knowledge into my mind and lead me to knowledge, and all I had to do was follow the clues. And that is exactly what's happened. And so I started off in the early years following the clues that showed me, and I put this in a series of books, that the people that appear to be running the world, like presidents, prime ministers, etc., are not. They're frontmen, they're puppets, and there is a cabal, a network of secret societies and interbreeding families that go back to the ancient world that are actually behind world events, and they're pushing the world in a particular direction towards an Orwellian global fascist, quote, communist, because they're the same anyway, really, state. With total surveillance, total control, and the epitome of 1984, George Orwell's book. So that went on for a while, and then the next question, once I started to put all that together, was who's behind these bloodlines? Because it was very clear to me that this was not just something that was happening in the human realm. Because
can you tell us just before moving forward, who are they that put that in your mind?
Well, who knows? It's a certainly a level of consciousness that is working to bring an end to the suppression and control that we've been experiencing for eons now. And this is a time when that control is going to be dismantled. It seems at this time that it's getting more and more powerful, but it's actually in its death throes. We're going through a process of transformation now, which is going to bring this to an end. I was told that 20 years ago. I have no reason to doubt that 20 years on from the events that I've seen and experienced. In fact, even less so from the events that I've seen and experienced. So the question for me then, this is towards the end of the 90s, I guess, was who is behind the control system? Because it was very clear that it was so coordinated and so synchronistic, and in the way that all these different subject areas and areas of society and life were coming together in terms of the control system in the most amazingly synchronistic way. This was not people in dark suits sitting around a table discussing their next move. That was blatantly obvious, even more so now. There is a level of the control system which is people in dark suits sitting around a table, but that's part of the play out level of it. It's not the level from which it's orchestrated.
So it's like puppets being manipulated by from people from a higher dimension.
Yeah, well, kind of. I'm not sure it's too much of a higher dimension, because the desire for control over is a very low level of consciousness, and that's what we're dealing with in terms of the force behind the control system. What they've done is put humanity through the suppression of knowledge and the creation of ignorance. They put humanity in a smaller box of awareness than they are in, and it's the equivalent to, if you like, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And what humanity has the potential to do, and more people are beginning to do this and awaken, they have the ability to break out of that mind prison, to break out of that bubble of suppression and access who they really are, which is infinite consciousness, infinite possibility, infinite potential, infinite awareness. And when we do that, then we go beyond where the force behind the control system can go, because if you're in a state where you want control over, you want to own, you want to dictate, then that very state of being means that you are in a low level of awareness and in a low vibrational state. And the only way they've been able to control humanity all this time, up to this point, is, as I say, put humanity in a smaller box of awareness than they're in. So what started to happen from about 96 is that what happens actually is that the pattern from the start has been this. A new subject will come into my life. This has been happening since that I went to that psychic 20 years ago. And then from that moment, when it enters my life, information about that subject starts hitting me from all angles. In people I meet, in documents I see, in books I read, in things I come across. And this happened from about 96 when I was traveling around America. And in about 15 days traveling to different places, I met 12 different people who told me that they'd seen people who appeared to be human, who changed into a non-human form, a reptilian form actually, and then gone back to human. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting, but I'm going to put that on the back burner because don't know what's happening here, but I'll see what else comes. And from that moment, information kept coming to me, not only in the modern world, but by talking to people like Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman, the official historian of the Zulu nation in South Africa, whose whole history of Africa is of the manipulation by what they call the Chitahuri, the children of the serpent, the reptilian race. And I started to realize as I researched and followed the clues, which is what I do, that it's absolutely extraordinary how the serpent race and the serpent gods, if you like, are fundamental to religion and ancient religious beliefs all over the world. There was a man called the Reverend John Bathurst Dean. He wrote a book called Worship of the Serpent. It came out in 1933, and he did the book on the serpent, worship of the serpent being the basis of religions all over the world. And he said this in his conclusion: it appears then that no nations were so geographically remote or so religiously discordant that one, and only one, superstitious characteristic was common to all, that the most civilized and the most barbarous bowed down with the same devotion to the same engrossing entity, and that this entity either was or was represented by the same sacred serpent. It appears also that in most, if not all, the civilized countries where this serpent was worshipped, some fable or tradition which involved his history, directly or indirectly, alluded to the fall of man in paradise. That's very, very significant, in which the serpent was concerned. What follows then, but that the most ancient account respecting the cause and nature of this seduction must be the one from which all the rest have derived, which represents the victorious serpent, victorious over man in a state of innocence and subduing his soul in a state of sin into the most abject veneration and adoration of himself. And they found funnily enough, in South Africa, in the area around the Kalahari Desert, where the San people live, they're better known as the Bushmen, and they found, evidence of serpent worship there 70,000 years ago. And so when I started putting this reptilian non-human race information together from all these different sources, ancient and modern. That was the next stage of where I was being led, of where the information was taking me. Which brings us round to this book, because...
to the moon.
Yeah, the moon. The next stage was, okay, where are these fellas? And where is the control system based in terms of where it's being originated? And I went through the same sequence that I've been through so many times when I was writing that book. I sat down in this chair that I'm sitting in now one morning to start writing that day, and I had it was almost like an energy field descended on me. I could feel it. The atmosphere in the room changed. And what came to me so powerfully was the moon is not real, in the sense that it's a construct, a hollowed out planetoid, a constructed control system in effect. And of course I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, whoa, where did that come from? What's all this about? And I just put a few keywords into, NetFind, not expecting to find anything. A few words relating to the moon not being the heavenly body, if you like, that we were led to believe. And immediately, within seconds, I came across a book called Who Built the Moon? By two researchers a few years ago, wrote this book, pointing out all the anomalies, all the contradictions, all the things that shouldn't be about the moon, and concluding correctly, I would strongly suggest, that actually it's not what we think it is. It's a construct.
So you're saying it's a spacecraft owned by extraterrestrial group that has been manipulating humanity?
Yeah, I think I am certain from the information that's come my direction while I was writing this book that this reptilian race, in part, is not on the moon, it's inside the moon. Because it's funny that, I guess understandable, that when we're born into the world, we tend to accept how the world is when we consciously start to observe it. And of course, apart from a few days a month, every night up comes the moon, and you kind of accept it. Well, it's the moon, it's circling the earth, that's it. But when you start asking questions, as I started to as a result of what I've just described, you find that there are extraordinary anomalies relating to the moon. And first of all, science has no idea how it got there. They have a thing called the whack theory, and it's a theory and it doesn't stand up, where the Earth was hit by some Mars-type planet and a great chunk broke away and became the moon. When they couldn't make the physics of that stand up, they came up with a double whack theory, which is that the planet hit the Earth and then came back and hit it again. I mean, talk about desperate. They are so bemused, really, about the moon and all its anomalies, and it was summed up by a guy called Erwin Shapiro from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, who said the best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon doesn't exist because it really shouldn't be there in the form that it is. As these writers of Who Built the Moon said, the moon is bigger than it should be, apparently older than it should be, and much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit and is so extraordinary that all the existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight. Another guy, Isaac Asimov, a Russian professor of biochemistry who did a lot of research into the moon, he makes the very valid point that the moon should not be there, because small planets like the Earth with weak gravitational fields, they might well not have satellites at all. Never mind, the moon. And he points out that if it does have a satellite, the Earth should have one perhaps 30 miles across. The moon is 2,160 miles across. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It shouldn't be there. And then you've got the evidence that the moon is overwhelmingly hollow, because what it seems to be is that this planetoid was massively hollowed out to create an inner world where they could, very much like the Death Star of Darth Vader in Star Wars, which of course was produced by a big-time insider called George Lucas. And when the moon has been hit, massive blows, as NASA scientists have said, it's rung like a bell, or rung like a bell in the belfry, like a gong. Now that shouldn't be if it's a solid sphere, or solid as we perceive solid. It happens when something is hollow. And interestingly, when I contacted my great friend Credo Muchwa, when I was coming to these conclusions and putting this information together, I rang him and I didn't say, "Hey, Credo, I've come up with all this information about the moon." I asked him a simple question, because I don't like to lead people. That's not the way to do it if you're researching. And I said to him, "Can you tell me any Zulu legends about the moon?" I nearly fell off my chair when he started, given what I, put together up to that point. Mm-hmm. He said, yes, the Zulu legends about the moon say that the moon was brought here hundreds of generations ago by two brothers, which the Zulus call Wawani and Umpanku. Now, these relate to the two brothers that were said to lead the Anunnaki, a non-human race described in the Sumerian tablets that have been found over the last 100 and odd years and more in what we now call Iraq. The ancient Sumerians documented the existence of this Anunnaki, and they said that they were controlled and led by two brothers called Enki and Enlil. And the Zulu legends about Umpanku and Wawani, they call them the Water Brothers and say, quote, they had scaly skin like a fish. And the Enki character in the Sumerian tablets was actually related to water. He was called a water god. He had another name which related to water. And this is where the fish gods come from, like Dagon and Oannes and what have you, in the Mesopotamian accounts. And what the Zulu legends say is that Wawani and Umpanku stole the moon in the form of an egg from the great fire dragon and emptied out the yolk until it was hollow. They then rolled the moon across the sky to the earth and caused catastrophic events when it got here, cataclysmic events, because all these ancient accounts of great geological cataclysmic events, which the Bible calls the Great Flood, they talk about the earth turning over. Well, as the moon would have come in, the earth would have moved, because the earth is at current angle and axis in a large part because of the moon and the moon's influence. And, anthropologists and people, and scientists, when they look at these ancient legends like the Zulus, they take them literally. And they say, oh, no, they're a primitive people. They think the moon was an egg and all this stuff. But if you look at them symbolically, as you're supposed to, because, we have modern technology and the internet and stuff like that and virtual reality games that we can use as very powerful analogies for the way this universe works. But in ancient times, they didn't have that. So they had to use the symbolism that the people of their time could understand, that related to the lives that they lived. And the legends about the moon were that it was hollow and it had been hollowed out. And therefore they used the symbolism of the egg and the yolk being hollowed out. And it was extraordinary to me as I researched this, just how these legends of the moon fit so magnificently with modern evidence and scientific evidence, including by two scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences in the 1970s, who wrote a very detailed article in a magazine saying the moon is a hollowed out planetoid by a very, very advanced, in technological terms anyway, advanced race of non-humans, and that when they explain in this article how it was done and what the consequences of it would be in terms of the moon's makeup and everything, these great list of anomalies that the scientists point out, we don't understand this, we don't understand that, just fall to the ground. The anomalies are no longer anomalies once you come from this perspective that it is actually a hollowed out construct which they have the ability to control in terms of its movement. Also interesting, as some scientists have pointed out, when you look at the makeup of the moon on the surface, they say the moon is inside out. In other words, what's on the surface really should be inside the moon, which again supports this whole hollowing out situation that I'm talking about. So that was the big revelation, and there were others that I go on to in the book about what the moon is doing to us.
Yeah, and the moon matrix. But can you tell us what can we do with this information in our life, in our daily life?